What are some albums that everybody should hear at least once in their life, either because they are just genre defining or elicit such an emotional response, or alternatively are just the sheer pinnacle of what a genre has to offer that is going to stick with you, that you will regret if you don't listen to at least once? This is going to be pretty interactive because I know that everyone's going to have a different answer to this, of the albums that changed their lives or have stuck with them the longest. And I will say that in anticipation for this video, I had a massive short list of records that I wanted to include. Some of the biggest entries that are just as valid, but I feel like are a little bit of a given, would be like Black Sabbath's debut album, The Sound of Perseverance by Death, Meteora or Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, Toxicity by System of a Down, Master of Puppets by Metallica, Show No Mercy by Slayer, and so many more. I tried to blur the lines as best as I could between modern metal as well as classic metal from a variety of different genres of the albums that I truly do believe will have something for everyone. But let me know down in the comment section below your thoughts of this list, as well as your picks for the albums that you think everyone should hear before they die. Starting off with Cynic's record Focus. This is a crown jewel of technical death metal, one of the finest tech death releases ever made, if not just death metal releases ever made. It really is hard to believe that this record is only 35 minutes long, but the amount of influence that Cynic had on so many different genres is incredible, and the way that they incorporated jazz fusion into their music and avant-garde instrumentation redefined and recontextualized what extreme metal could be, as well as death metal and technical death metal, inspiring countless bands, not just from a death metal perspective, but you have a lot of different progressive metal bands, metalcore bands, mathcore bands that took heavy hints from what Cynic did on Focus, and it is a timeless record. It really is a record that sticks in the brevity department, and it knows that quality is better than quantity, and it truly is incredible. And even after all of these years, is still one of the best produced death metal or tech death releases that you will ever hear. Considering this thing was released in the early 90s, it still stands the test of time as one of the best produced, not just death metal records, not just tech death records, metal records that I have ever heard. It is fantastically produced. Next up we have Bell Witch's Mirror Reaper, and it is saying that for a record that is this off the beaten path in a micro genre such as funeral doom metal, that it garnered the acclaim that it did and got people that weren't even into metal period, let alone this extreme of metal, into it. And it's not hard to see why. It is one sheer movement that is fueled by sorrow, by loss. And when you embody that sort of isolation and desolation, such as losing someone, I feel like anyone who has lost someone in their life, specifically someone who is dead, someone that's no longer with you, I think you will feel the movement. I have always said that if you are writing from a place of experience rather than just storytelling, it is going to instantaneously connect better, and when you put that ink to paper, it is going to have so much more emotional validity to it, so much more resonance to it, because you are coming from a perspective of knowing what that feels like, processing that, and going through in live time those harsh emotions that binds together humanity. I feel like this is a must listen for anyone, and even if you aren't typically a fan of very slow music, it is a must. A record that has stuck with me ever since it came out, and I go back to regularly for a similar reason to Bell Witch's Mirror Reaper being fueled by loss, Architect's record Holy Hell. To me, this is the best Architect's record, and I know that not everyone is going to agree with that, and Architects have a discography that is just near flawless unless you're talking about the newer shit, so don't let that deter you from checking out other releases. Don't just prioritize this. But I think similarly to how Mirror Reaper embodies those emotions of loss and sorrow so effectively because it is objectively correct in what they were processing at the time, Architects were in a similar space when they were writing and constructing this record, and it feels that way. It feels furious and it feels rageful, and as opposed to how Bell Witch approached Mirror Reaper with the slowness and the sadness of the situation, Architects feels like rage. It feels like screaming up at the sky. It feels like begging for answers. It feels like the complete opposite of the sorrow you feel when something traumatic happens in your life, and instead that sorrow gets replaced with pure ire and pure anger at the world, at a creator, at anything. And that sort of messaging and that sort of feeling of rawness combined with how Architects were just at their peak from a production department, and it showed with how many metalcore bands wanted to emulate what Architects were doing. this record just sticks with me so much. Taking kind of a detour from the emotional department, we have Era's album Augment. I think that Augment is one of the best, if not my favorite, gent records, progressive metalcore records of all time. It feels like a cinematic theatrical movie playing out with so many movements, so much versatility. The sound is so crisp and well orchestrated without ever sacrificing any sort of organicness or feeling like it's manufactured. I was blown away the first time I heard Augment, and it was one of the first times that I ever rushed to try to buy a record on physical copy the second that I heard it. I have so many memories with this record, and I think that if you are someone that loves like existentialism and philosophy in your music, some really deep themes, Era in this specific part of their career were absolutely living up to that. I don't think I need to tell anyone this, and I think that this is one of those it's a given records, but can I just say Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera? I mean, there are so many great Pantera records, but what Dimebag Darrell was doing in the sense of minimalism and simplicity was still making some of the most recognizable riffs in the entirety of metal history. Phil Anselmo was at the top of his game, and it's just one of those records that you feel as like a full body experience. It's so hard to look past, it is so hard to look away from. It just gets inside of you, it gets in your bones, and it pounds you down. It just feels so gritty, and the textures on this record, it is so like chromatic sounding. It is incredible. Similarly to how Cynic's like production is held up, I think that the production on this thing is just incredible. It's so primordial and raw, but it still feels like everything is given its place to breathe. No, Pantera isn't just for gym bros. Pantera made some of the best heavy metal music of all time and inspired countless groove metal bands that would come after them. Next up, I Will Destroy You, Myself, and Everything I've Ever Loved by Zombie Shark. This is a one-man cyber grind project that I gave a 10 out of 10 to. It's one of the only times I've given a 10 out of 10 on this channel. I had the privilege of speaking to Corey, the mastermind of this project. This redefined not just how I saw grind and cyber grind, but just metal as a whole. When I first heard this, I was like, how is this not bigger than it is? It goes to show that the underground is always cooking up something that is incredible. And this is one of those records that I could see inspiring bands in the future if they are able to, you know, hear it. But oh my god, this thing is an onslaught. Like, I know that you hear the term onslaught when it comes to grind music a lot, but I fucking mean it. I'm pretty desensitized and numb when it comes to brutality in music. This record really did crush my spirit. It is asphyxiating and constant. It is relentless, and it has some of the best employment of synths and electronics in the music that I have ever heard in any metal project in my entire life. It is very quick, it gets in and out, and it is addictive. The second you end it, you want to restart it all, even if your ears are gonna fall out. You might have noticed I put the Master of Puppets record by Metallica in the short list, but I want to go with Ride the Lightning for the one that I think you need to hear. I was kind of debating between this and The Black because I think that both albums are not only incredibly tight and fascinating to examine, two of the most important records for all of metal history, the highest selling album of history being the Black Album, and I just think that technically speaking, Ride the Lightning has all of the best qualities of later era Metallica and early stage Metallica, to where it still has that youthful exuberance and immaturity that was kind of on Kill 'Em All, but they were really catching their stride. And whereas Master of Puppets is just an incredibly timeless thrash metal record, I think that Ride the Lightning has all of the best qualities of early speed metal, early heavy metal, some of their thrash metal influence from Kill 'Em All, and just some of their flashiest songwriting, insanely catchy music. And it's not as commercially viable as a Black, but it is not as like raw as a Kill 'Em All, and it's not as basic of a pick as Master of Puppets, because who the fuck hasn't heard Master of Puppets? Please listen to Master of Puppets. It's just one of those records I feel like everyone should hear at least once. Next record is Agaloc's The Mantle. What an incredibly diverse and versatile record that takes every bit of the human condition in an atmospheric sense, an expansive sense, and just builds a complete landscape that you can just be mesmerized by. It feels like a fantasy wonderland. It is equal parts heavy, it is equal parts crushingly beautiful, it is melodic and harmonious in all of the right places, and it does feel like you are opening a fairy tale. And it's one of those records that just has an imprint on you and leaves a lasting impression, because there are so few bands that have done what Agalloch have done on this album. And I've always said that atmospheric, like black and folk metal, is some of the best music if it is done properly. It is a perfect blend of influences, and I don't have anything more to say. Like, please listen to The Mantle if you haven't. Next up, Judas Priest, Painkiller. Judas Priest have been notorious for completely just kicking the ass of all of their past material and dominating metal every couple of decades. Firepower did that not too terribly long ago, so it is hilarious that like they just keep doing it. They have aged like fine wine. Rob Halford is one of the best metal vocalists of all time and just a complete badass, but Painkiller is one of those albums that fuck the late 1960s and fuck the 1970s. Motorhead and Iron Maiden, they have nothing on Painkiller. It is one of the most like true blue heavy metal albums that feel like it was birthed out of 1973, but also couldn't have been made in any other time but the 1990s. Judas Priest were in top form, and if you just want true blue heavy metal music, I understand that like Iron Maiden, early Metallica, all these bands, like they are fantastic, don't get me wrong, especially like Black Sabbath too, Led Zeppelin, some of their early work, Deep Purple, but I swear to God, Judas Priest, riff writing, solos, vocalizations, catchiness, lack of compromise, lack of sacrificing heaviness, and just being at the top of heavy metal were on just full display on this album, and Painkiller blows my mind. It is such a fun time, and I think that sometimes that's something people forget. Metal, it can be fun. Yeah, it can be heavy, it can have serious meanings, but it is just dumb fun sometimes. From start to finish, front to back, and yeah, what else can you say? Next up, the Anthropocene Extinction by Cattle Decapitation. I was trying to decide if I wanted to do Monolith of Inhumanity or The Harvest Floor or Death Atlas, because I think that they all embody different parts of Cattle Decapitation's clever songwriting and important songwriting, but the Anthropocene Extinction, it is apocalyptic. It feels like the end of the world is nigh, and from a lyrical department, it is incredible. I think that Travis Ryan as a vocal chameleon is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, metal vocalists. Some of the vocal acrobatics that he is capable of across Cattle Decapitation's entire discography is great, and with so many of the talking points on this album being relevant to day-to-day life or being sort of a threat to existence, I think that you can really get lost in the prose of this album. You would think that it would just be gnarly, grotesque lyrics about killing someone, but it is so topical, it's so well thought out. It really just does pull you into a world, and I don't think there's been any other band that have been able to put those themes into their music in such a rational way, but with so much misanthropy and nihilism towards the state of the world. And that anti-human messaging can really just grab you, because I feel like there are a lot of bands that try to do it, and none can come close to Cattle Decap. And obviously, I could have listed dozens of more records from classic bands, from newer bands, but I tried to make it a combination. What are your picks, and would you like to see more installments of the series? Because I'd love to continue this if you guys end up enjoying it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.